It's about 1984. I have taught Jinshindo acupressure. Jinshindo acupressure, body-mind acupressure, is a 5-element system. As I began to teach the 5 elements, soon thereafter I began to look at the Native American tradition and even introducing that to my acupressure classes through the medicine cards of Jamie Soms and David Carson. And we would open the class by each taking a medicine card, and we would sit in the circle because the circle is part of the 5 elements. But as I looked at Native American tradition through the teachings of Sun Bear and White Bear and the Native people, I saw that the circle was also part of Native American tradition as the medicine wheel. And they talked about the different directions. The north being the place of the cold, and the white bear, the white bear, the white buffalo, the white wolf, the place of the teacher. And I saw how there was a one-on-one correspondence to this idea of teacher in the north and the place of water that existed for both Native American tradition and somehow enfolded upon the tradition of Asian medicine as well. I started to see these correspondences in other traditions. As I began studies with Melodoma Somé and Sobonfu Somé in looking at the Dagara tradition of West Africa, the 5 elements corresponded exactly. They had slightly different names. Wood was called nature spirit, but it was a place where Melodoma had to, in his initiation, begin to meditate until he saw the green woman in the tree. And when he told his native elders, "Oh, I've seen the green woman," they said, "Go back and meditate." And I really loved Melodoma for telling me that he had said that, because how many of us want to stop meditating? Oh, please, I've seen the green woman. And so I appreciated him saying that. The metal, what's called metal in the Asian tradition, in the African system, they refer to as mineral, and they talk about it as a place of the ancestors. And having a workshop with Diane Connolly, who wrote a book on the 5 elements from the Chinese point of view, she talks about metal as being the place where we bow to our ancestors. So again, the reflection between Africa and also in Asian medicine, a one-on-one correspondence. Then there were things that were different. In Native tradition and also in Tibetan tradition, as well as the Hawaiian tradition, they talked about air. And this was not that I could see in the 5 elements, and I began to wonder about that. I asked my Tai Ji instructor, Sung Liang Al Huang, about this, and he said that, well, air is contained in wood because that's part of wood wind. And then I also saw where it was contained in metal because in the metal element, this is the place of the lungs, and this is the place of the breath. But we could also say that you cannot have fire without air. You need oxygen for fire to exist. You can't have muscles that operate without oxygen. If we don't breathe, our muscles become too tight, and eventually we can die without breath. And of course, with water, it's the bubbling of the water that helps the water, that gives it movement. And so we see that air does exist. And I really felt that strongly that if the Hawaiians talk about it as a separate element, and if Native people talk about it as a separate element, that it would be important to also discuss it within the elements. And so I began to think about how could that not dilute or pollute a knowledge base that I already had, but how could it inform it? If we look at our geography, air, fire, water, metal, and wood all exist. It puzzled me that in Native tradition and in Hawaiian tradition they didn't talk about wood. Not so much with Hawaiian, well, a little bit in Hawaiian, because you see the plants and the trees are so lush. And they certainly exist on the islands. In fact, going to the islands, I saw certain plants that might be this big here that were 5 feet tall, philodendrons, 5 feet tall. So the wood element is very present there, but somehow not quite discussed. I think they consider it part of earth. The wood element is certainly in Native American tradition, for it is in the sun dance. A tree is involved. In fact, they go and they find an appropriate tree and they take it off to a designated area, and they've cut it, and then they pull it up, and then they tether the tree, and then the sun dancers are actually tethered to the trees, those that wish to have that level of experience. And some of the men have horns that are taken through this piercing of the skin, and then they're tied to the tree and they dance for days until they pull away from the tree and the flesh pulls away from them. And this is done as part of their prayers for peace for us. So the tree is very involved in Native tradition as well. So I present this as 7 elements, and then the 7th being something that even physicists are scratching their heads about, because they say that what we can see and what even computers can see and even what telescopes can see, the most advanced telescopes, are what we considered illuminated space. They believe that 5 to 6 times that exists in the universe, and if that didn't exist, we wouldn't exist either. And they're now calling that black matter. It used to be referred to as ether, and it's kind of, they've changed that over time. The Native people, it's interesting they call it black matter, because the Native people call it the great mystery, the void. They talk about it in the Hawaiian tradition as Po. And this is the place, I really believe in my heart, where healing takes place. It's the place within where we go into the silence after we've done all our other things, and we've come into that place of silence. And it's also the space you enter into as a therapist with a client, so that you can feel into the mystery of that person. And pathology has a chance to fall away, because you understand that person at a different level, and that person creates an understanding for themselves at a different level. And they create a new pattern, a pattern of healing and wholeness within themselves. So over this next 7 classes that we have, and today we're going to be doing water, the first of the elements, in place of the prenatal time, we'll be exploring each of these elements: water, wood, fire, earth, metal or mineral, and then also air and the great mystery. On our last class, we'll also do an interaction where we have the students act out the parts of the elements and see how they help each other inside our bodies, but also to help each other in terms of even giving rise to new projects, new ideas, as we go through our life. I hope you enjoy this series, and I look forward to sharing it with you. Thank you.